As you can tell from the title and thumbnail, this is going to be an interview with Miyoko Schinner. I'm so excited for you guys to see this conversation that I had with Miyoko, and it is so cool to be posting this video today because today, the day that I'm posting this, is exactly 1 year from the date that I posted my video on the Miyoko's situation last year. If you haven't seen that video and you're not familiar with the situation, maybe watch that before you watch this to give you some context. After I made that video, I had thought to myself how amazing it would be to actually get to speak with her about the situation, because if you recall, there were a lot of unanswered questions at that time and still are to some extent. So I reached out to her and was very happy that she said yes, and we had an amazing conversation. She was really forthcoming. I was definitely expecting certain things, certain topics to be off limits, and there was one question that she couldn't really answer, which you guys will see. Other than that, she answered everything and honestly went way more in depth than I was expecting her to. And she also gave a little sneak preview of a new project she's working on. And no, it's not her upcoming cookbook, it's something else. So I really hope you guys enjoyed this conversation as much as I did. And here we go. I am honored to be joined by Miyoko Schinner, a powerhouse vegan innovator that we all know and love. She is a vegan chef, author, entrepreneur, activist, and so many other things. Her current endeavors include her YouTube channel, The Vegan Good Life with Miyoko, her farm animal sanctuary, Rancho Compasión, and she's also working on a new cookbook, The Vegan Creamery, which is coming out next year. Welcome, Miyoko. I'm so excited to talk to you.
Hi, Marielle.
Perfect pronunciation. Oh my gosh. Very impressive. So I'd love to start, I guess, with just a general question of how this last year has been and how you're doing now.
Okay. Well, let's say that it was not a cakewalk. I definitely had my dark moments. But as strange as it may seem, I'm really glad that I went through this experience, that I am here where I am today, because there are certain learnings that I wouldn't have had if I hadn't gone through it. I mean, the truth is that as long as you're selling something, it inhibits the clarity of the truth. Your ability to actually see the truth is going to be compromised by whatever it is you're selling. And we're all hustling. We're all out there trying to promote ourselves, trying to, get by in life, trying to survive. And so it's very, very hard to have that clarity of vision anyway. But the more intense the need to participate in a system that is about an ROI, the less you're likely to really be able to see what is the fundamental truth behind what I'm doing, what the world needs, as far as I'm concerned, around the future of food, animals, equity and justice for human beings, et cetera. And so over the last year, I've had a lot of time to really think about the food system in general, about the truth of what do we really need to do in order to reinvent a future food system that is based on not just saving animals, but equity and justice for the planet and for other human beings. What do we truly need to do? I don't think I had that ability to do that when I was running a company. And so I've had a lot of time to think about it, to study a lot, to read a lot of books, and I'm in a very different place. I definitely wouldn't start a business like I had before. I mean, I believe in businesses. I just wouldn't do it the way I did before. So for that reason, I'm grateful that I've had a period of, let's say, personal evolution.
Yeah, it seems like it's been a pretty reflective year for you and also a very creative year. It's been nice. I know you've talked about in your LinkedIn posts how it's been being kind of back in your creativity. Speaking of that, your YouTube channel launched about a year ago, and it's called The Vegan Good Life with Miyoko. You live on a farm animal sanctuary, you grow a lot of your own food. You really do seem to be living what I would consider a good life. But
A good life, yeah.
what does that mean to you, the vegan good life?
The good life is, I think, what we all aspire to. Everywhere in the world, where we can enjoy the simple things of life, whether it's food, a conversation with a friend, family, breaking bread across the table, a glass of wine, nothing extraordinary, not big fancy things, but just the simple things of life that root us in who we are as humans, that ground us. And to realize that we can all have that good life. And I believe it's something that should be accessible to everyone on this planet. And I believe that if you can have that good life, you should do it without harming others.
Mm.
So, as long as we're harming others in the process, I don't know, how good is it?
Mm.
The good life, I think, has dual meanings. One is um, what we can enjoy, and the other is the ethical part.
Mm. Yeah. Right. Because how good is it if we're causing harm, or if it's not good for others, then
That's
how
right.
good can we really feel about it? You are also working on your new vegan cheese cookbook. It's called The Vegan Creamery. It's coming out next year. It's been so fun seeing little sneak previews of what you've been working on your social medias. Your first vegan cheese cookbook, Artisan Vegan Cheese, came out in 2012. I have it downstairs. It is very well loved. I'm curious if any of your cheese cooking methods or your philosophies on plant dairies have changed in the last 12 years, and are these changes things that we are going to see reflected in the new cookbook?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the original cookbook, um, it was largely based on cashews, because cashews seemed to me at the time the cow's milk of the plant
Right.
of the plant kingdom, I guess. They're the most versatile, they're easily obtainable. You don't need a lot of fancy equipment, etc. And so many different varieties of cheese were possible. As it turns out, there's a lot of people that are allergic to cashews, and depending on where you're sourcing them, cashews can be fantastic because they are traditionally wild. And so when I was part of Miyoko's and we were obtaining our cashews from the mountains of Vietnam, they were not planted. They were just sort of wild crops that covered entire mountainsides.
Hmm.
It was pretty interesting. And then the so-called farmers, were people that just collected the cashews that naturally grew.
Hmm.
So, there were it was a way to support that community as well too, because that was their primary source of income. Um, However, you do have to bring them in here, and I really began to think about what other crops, what other plants are there that can be grown in more parts of the world, not just in tropical climates, but can be grown everywhere and can be nitrogen fixing as well. And you could even grow them in your backyard if you have a lot of land. And so the new cookbook makes cheese in a more traditional dairy cheese making way, in meaning that we first make the milk, and then we coagulate the milk, and then we drain the whey from the milk, and we're left with curds, which turn into cheese. And so there are a variety of ingredients, everything from legumes to seeds. I have a couple of cashew recipes as well, but I've got hemp seeds, pumpkin seeds, almonds, chickpeas, mung beans, um, watermelon seeds, you name it. There are cantaloupe seeds. So you name it. And it's not just cheese. I have other recipes for yogurt, ice cream, milk, etc. The whole gamut of the creamery. And it really is to allow the expression of each of these milks to define their own being. So I'm not trying to replicate cheddar or whatever, although some of them end up tasting something like that, but
Yeah.
it's really like, what is the expression of sunflower seeds in as cheese when you do this process? It's going to taste a
Hmm.
little bit different from pumpkin seeds. The curds are different, etc. So it's interesting. I'm also I'm also playing around with a lot of molds. So we have, for example, a couple of different kinds of blue. I've got bloomy rinds in there, etc. And I think they're more nutrient dense. Most of the cheeses are very high in protein. Many of them have no added fats at all. In terms of the oils, I'm also exploring other oils when I do use them, besides coconut oil, which is what predominantly plant-based cheesemakers use. So there are other oils that will provide a different mouthfeel, for example. And so I'm exploring that as well. Oh, and I also have butter recipes in there. So, yeah.
Yay. Um, yeah, that's something that I definitely feel like I have a little bit of a limiting belief with cashews, where I'm just like, oh, cashews equals, like you said, equivalent to cow's milk. And so I don't even think of some of those other ingredients you listed as being able to be creamy. So that'll be really interesting to see. Um, so you also, like I mentioned, you have a farm animal sanctuary, Rancho Compasión, which I feel like is most vegans' dream to one day have. But I also know it's an incredible amount of work and upkeep. How is Rancho Compasión doing, and how are all the animals?
The animals are all great, and so are the kids. I started this in 2015. Initially, it was just me mucking manure, feeding the animals. We now have 5 staff members and lots of volunteers, so I'm rarely down there. Although I did drop my dogs off in our garden because we have an after-school program now. We're really focused on educating kids, on bringing young kids from the age of 7 on up, from first grade on up, to connect with animals and learn that they are their friends. And then they get their hands in the soil and grow vegetables, and they learn that that is where their food comes from.
Mm.
And we don't indoctrinate them in a dogmatic fashion. We just tell animal stories, let them make the connection. We let the kids take care of the animals, especially the geriatric or the injured animals, and they provide therapy and things, and it brings out the compassion in them.
Yeah.
And then they make food. Sometimes they pick vegetables and feed it to the animals. So they become caretakers. And when we can tap into that part of their heart, uh, and make that connection, the kids draw conclusions naturally. So we feel like this is the most important thing we can do. Let the animals be ambassadors to touch hearts and change minds. And so we have a program that ranges from first grade through high school. And we have after school programs, field trips. We also have kids from very diverse backgrounds, kids that are from at-risk programs, kids that are on the spectrum or have physical disabilities. We have kids from underserved communities as well. So we really try to bring the gamut, all all walks of life here, so that we can create awareness among diverse communities. One of the things that I've realized is that the vegan community is sometimes all too white. And sanctuaries are also very, very white. And sanctuaries can speak to so many different types of people. It can be a sanctuary not just for animals, but for people as well. So especially if you are a person who needs sanctuary, this is, is a child that's, let's say, at risk or something, coming here and connecting with the animals and doing something that's as fundamental as planting vegetables and getting their hands in the soil and then cooking with the vegetables can be therapeutic in a very deep way. So this is really what we're focused on right now, is the programming that we have with youth.
That's amazing. I had no idea that you guys did that, and it is so important. Kids do love animals. They really just genuinely love animals, and so kind of making that connection as to what that really means is amazing. And also, how simple is that? Just like growing food in the soil, petting a cow. It is just so simple, and it's amazing how much of that just gets, I don't know, covered up in the way that we live our lives. Switching to your life as an entrepreneur, you have described yourself as a lifelong entrepreneur. At one point, you were delivering pound cakes out of your backpack in Tokyo in the 80s. You also had a restaurant called Now and Zen, which eventually became a product line. And I would say the most known line from that product was UnTurkey. I read this somewhere, I'm not sure if it's true, that Seth Tibbett of Tofurkey ended up being your first investor in Miyoko's.
That is actually true. And we're friends, and he was up here about 2 weeks ago. went out to dinner with him, and he tried some of my new cheeses, and he said, wow, you'll have no trouble finding backers for these. And I'm like, I'm not going there. That is not what I'm looking for. So,
Oh my gosh.
yeah.
I made a joke in the video I made last year because I mentioned that fact. I wasn't sure if it was true, but I made a joke that Seth Tibbett was just like, please do something else. Don't compete with my tofurkey anymore. Start a cheese business instead. Because he didn't want to compete with you. I never actually got to try tofurkey, or sorry, UnTurkey,
Turkey.
but yeah, it looks really good from the videos I've seen. Um, I heard you say in an interview that you did with the Chick Peeps podcast that when you launched your cheese company, it was you and about 3 other people, and you opened up orders on a Friday, and by the end of the weekend, you had 50,000 orders, which sounds simultaneously so exciting and also very overwhelming. What was it like having that many orders, and were you surprised by it?
Oh, so it was $50,000 worth of orders, not 50
Oh,
orders. So
interesting. Okay.
50,000 would have been a little bit difficult.
Yeah.
But, I mean, if you, as a completely unknown company, to go live on a Friday afternoon and then by Monday morning have $50,000 in orders was a little bit crazy. It mounted to about 500 orders,
Right.
averaging about $100 each, give or take.
Right.
And we were not expecting that. We thought maybe we would get $5,000 worth of orders or so. So we were pretty blown away because so then we had to scramble.
Mhm.
I think we had to push off when we were shipping the products
Yeah.
because we could make them fast enough. It told me that there was definitely great demand. And, I will add that I was not targeting the flexitarian audience. I was targeting vegans. That I was selling to vegans because I felt like, hey, they've been wanting this for a long time, and they are my core audience. And I think it's important to take care of your core audience.
Mhm. Yeah. I mean, I think that's great. Also, like, we need it. Like, we need it more than flexitarians do
Yeah.
because that's all that we could eat. Um, it seems like a lot of times smaller companies get put in a position where they feel like they need to take on outside investment in order to be able to have the proper facilities and capabilities to meet demand. And I know that can sometimes be a trade-off. When you started taking on outside investment, did it feel like it was a choice that you were making, or was it more like this is just what we have to do?
I think I think we fool ourselves into thinking that it's a choice, or actually that we have to do it this way. We live in a time right now where we believe that nonstop growth, constant growth is the single most important thing, that the success of a business is founded on whether or not it can continually grow. And we know that that's one of the faults of capitalism, because endless growth isn't possible. We're going to extract every single resource possible on this planet.
Mhm.
If, we can't grow eternally. But we are operating at a time in history where we believe we bought the myth that growth is paramount. When I first conceived of this company, it was not about growth. It was about having a little community cheese shop in Fairfax, California, the mountain bike capital of the world. And, I was going to have a little production facility there and a little retail shop. And we put in these big windows so that people that were in the retail shop could look into the production room and see people making cheese, to really bring that authentic experience to people. And that was my plan, was that we were going to have this bustling little cheese shop, and also serve lunch. Um, and then, of course, e-commerce took off. 3 months later, Whole Foods came calling and said, hey, we'd love to carry your products in NorCal. And we signed on with a West Coast distributor immediately. UNFI, the largest distributor in the country, said, okay, we're going to go national with you. And so there's a lot of excitement that we got caught up in. And it was like, oh my God, they want our product. And you just start going down this path and you can't stop. But the thing that really convinced me not to pull the brakes was when an investor said to me, a VC said to me, why do you want to stay small? Why do you want to stay local or regional? I mean, the bigger you get, the more impact you're going to have. And that's what's so important. Like, we don't have time. We're running out of time to save the animals. You've got to have impact. And I bought it. I bought that. I was like, well, that makes a lot of sense. And she's a VC and she's got to be really smart. And so I totally bought that. And I think it's a myth. I think it's wrong. I don't think that's how we change the world. I mean, I don't think a handle of, there's 10 or 11 corporations that control about 70% of the packaged food system in the world. 50% of what we eat in the United States comes from ultra-processed packaged foods that are produced by the 10 biggest companies. The way to avoid not becoming part of that is to stay local and regional. If you take VC money, there is an expectation that they have to make at least 3 times their investment. And so you have to exit, which means you have to sell. And if you've done your job and grown your company to a certain size, the only people that can afford to buy you are going to be companies that are doing billions of dollars. And so you become part of that machine. And you basically are going to be selling out.
Right.
And maybe that's okay if your purpose is to make a big chunk of money at the end of the day. But the truth there also is that very few entrepreneurs actually ever make any money. So one of the things you have to realize is that 90% of all startups that are funded by VCs fail before the 10th year. 50% fail within the first 2 years, okay? But by year 9 or 10, almost all of them have failed. So they've gone out of business. They have, so they've returned no money to anybody, okay? And then of the 10% that have actually succeeded and have been sold or had a healthy exit, only about 20% of the founders actually make any money from that. So it's really a crapshoot. Your chance of getting rich from this is very little, because by the time that there's been dilution, there's little games that VCs play to devalue the founder through knocking down the series, where the value of their stock, their series, et cetera. There's liquidation preferences where they get a multiple of the percentage that they own. I mean, there's so many different tactics they have. If you don't meet certain performance metrics, et cetera, the VC can end up, owning more, et cetera. And so it's really written the game is to enrich those investors and not really benefit founders. So very few founders, you only hear about the ones that have been successful, and you think, oh, as long as I have a startup, I'm going to be successful. But the chance of actually succeeding is, probably less than 10%, or even less than that. So anyway, so that's one thing. But I also don't think we change the world but through consolidation. I think we change the world by going back to local and regional businesses, not having one cheese company or having only 5 different brands on a supermarket shelf, but having, I don't know, I was just in Portland and there were 2 vegan cheese shops in Portland. Why don't we have vegan cheese shops in every single municipality? Why can't we have 10,000 vegan cheese shops and vegan butchers and whatever, rather than just a couple of companies monopolizing the marketplace? I think that's how we change the world. That's how we feed our communities. That's how we give back to our communities. And we have been, going down this path of consolidation for the last several decades. And I think it's destroying opportunities for smaller producers and farmers, and especially people of color and women. And it's not just here in the United States, it's all over the world. We're seeing the same thing happen. So I want to decentralize food. I want to create more opportunities for more people, which is why, I'm going to be, quote unquote, open sourcing my recipes in my new book. And I hope that will launch 10,000 vegan cheese shops.
Yes, I wanted to touch on that. I heard you talking about that in your most recent video. And, of course, I had been wondering, and I think a lot of people also had been wondering if, if a similar trajectory would happen with this book where you release the book and everyone's like, this is great. Now we want to buy them from you, and you'd start another product line. And it sounded like you're at this point leaning toward that not happening. And I love the idea of open sourcing the recipes and having vegan cheese shops. But my heart also broke a little bit to think that we wouldn't get to have your products again.
Well, I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, I'm not saying that I won't open a cheese shop
Oh,
or,
okay.
or sell to local regional stores.
Yeah.
But I think we need to invest in local and regional economies.
Yeah.
Like in the old days, every town had different selection of stores and different products.
Yeah.
And now it's the sameness. Wherever you go, you get the same
Same
product.
thing. I have definitely noticed that, even especially at Whole Foods. It's like every single Whole Foods now, it's just like never
Mhm.
anything unique, never anything
No.
different to try. It's just the same exact
Mhm.
stuff. But I really love that concept of taking the power back. Um, with your different ventures over the years, it seems like you had varying levels of success, but nothing obviously had compared to the meteoric success of Miyoko's. And I'd imagine for any entrepreneur, having a venture be so incredibly successful is something that you maybe dream about for a long time and imagine what it would be like. I'm curious for you, what was the reality of that success like compared to maybe what you had imagined?
Oh gosh. I felt incredibly blessed. Every single day I felt just so lucky to have had that opportunity. I mean, every single day I would wake up and think, oh my God, like what did I do right? Because I felt so lucky. I felt so grateful um, that I had this opportunity to not only to succeed in terms of landing a product in so many, within the current context, which I wouldn't do it this way anymore. But at the time, it felt like this is pretty exciting. Um, I loved not just my success, but I also felt like I felt successful in that I had inspired others to follow suit.
Mm.
And I have never been one. One of the things that made me really uncomfortable was this whole notion of, as I talked about, intellectual property. And every company's like, we got to protect our intellectual property. Do you have patents? This, that, and the other thing. And the fact is, I had sort of open sourced everything in my book in the very beginning. And it didn't hurt us at all. It wasn't like because there's a couple of vegan cheese shops in Portland, that was threatening Miyoko's. I mean, we have to get over this notion. There's room for everybody. We have to support each other. We have to collaborate. We have to create unity rather than this, I'm going to protect my IP and don't, I don't, so,
Yeah.
I felt more grateful that I've been able to impact others, probably more than my own success in terms of growing a business.
Mm, that's beautiful. And I'm not surprised to hear that, because you really do seem to have such a generous spirit and wanting the best collectively, as opposed to, like you said, just like guarding what you have so tightly and just being about making endless amounts of money. Some of the challenges toward the end of your time with the company were made public. But what were some other challenges over your years as CEO that you had to face and overcame?
I think it's hard. I think most creative people don't necessarily know how to run an organization, especially when it's growing. And there's a lot of expectations to be met coming from retailers, distributors, investors, your staff, et cetera. And one of the biggest challenges I had early on was, how do you maintain a healthy culture while you're growing a company like this? And it was something that I had to spend a lot of time thinking about. I got a CEO coach at one point that I worked with for several years to really, work on my own leadership skills. And then I think as we became a larger organization, and I think this is very typical in a lot of organizations. I've talked to other founders that have said the same thing. I think the problem with founders oftentimes is that they come from a place of creativity and they're out of the box thinkers, especially if they're people that create novel products. They're not necessarily the ones that have the pedigree. And what I've heard from a lot of people, and I experience this myself, is that when the people that do have the pedigree come in, you start getting questioned because they're like, well, how can you know that? Because, we're the ones that have the degrees or whatever. And so that can become very, very challenging. Like your authority, your knowledge. I think we live in a society that has a very sort of has an appreciation or as an overestimation for knowledge that comes out of a certain type of training rather than the free questioning, innovative spirit that some people have. And oftentimes innovation does not come from education. Sometimes innovation is from those that are thinking outside the confines of what they've learned and they question. And so it's just something that I've heard a lot of founders talk about, especially female founders.
Yeah.
That have been put into a position where they're being challenged from within the organization. And, as their organizations grow, not everybody, there are those that are natural leaders in some capacity. But I think if you're a creative leader in a way, I think some of those people do get questioned. So that I think is a challenge. And, it's
Well, one big challenge that you overcame was that in 2020, as I understand it, the California Department of Food and Agriculture demanded that you stop using the words butter, lactose-free, and cruelty-free on your packaging. And they also, which was, I thought, the most bizarre parts, they requested that the photo of a woman hugging a cow be removed from the company's website. That woman was, of course, you, and I'm guessing the cow was one of your residents at your sanctuary. But I imagine that whole experience was really stressful, but also empowering. And I'd love to hear what that meant to you.
Yeah, I mean, we got the letter, and instead of complying, we sued the state of California and we won. And it helped set a precedent for what we could call butter and even milk, et cetera. The basis of their complaint was about consumer confusion. And it was interesting because our lawyers they actually did a study finding out who was, to assess whether or not confusion truly existed. And what they found was that as many people were confused about dairy milk as plant milk. There was almost no difference between the number of people who were confused by terms such as butter or milk. Whether it was made from plants or cows, they were confused. So it just, the majority were not confused, but there was the same amount, whatever it was, I can't remember, less than 10% that were just confused no matter what. So.
Oh my gosh. Yes, that's just the latest grasping at straws argument, but it's so great that you guys were able to fight that and win and have it be so public so that everyone kind of knows that this was just another loss for, the dairy industry. It seems like it was about 8 months between the time when you were let go and when the public found out. I wondered, what were those 8 months like, and was there any sense of relief once the public found out?
I would have to say, just personally, it was a very dark time for me. And yet I was traveling a lot, giving a lot of talks and public facing, not saying anything, but in some ways, I'm really grateful that everything became public in my case. And the reason is that because it provided an opportunity for other founders to reach out to me to tell me their stories. And in the last year and a half, I have heard from dozens and dozens of founders who have shared their stories, founders who have been silenced, who were unable to come out and speak. And this is the primary reason, not because of me. As I said it in some weird way, I'm grateful for what I went through because it put me in a very different position, in terms of where I am thinking wise. But we live in this framework of this is the only way you can be an entrepreneur now. We think that the only way you can be an entrepreneur is to go out and raise money. And I was at an event speaking at Lewis and Clark last week, and a woman came up to me, a young entrepreneur, and she said, I have this idea, I want to do this business. How do I raise money? And I said to her, that's the wrong question to be asking. And I think there was this obsession that people just think that the meaning of success is when I raise money. And if you look at all these headlines across plant-based news journals, et cetera, it's always like, so-and-so just raised 32 million, so-and-so raised 6 million, as if just raising the money is something to celebrate. And it's not. It means that you just gave away a big chunk of your company and you gave away a big chunk of control. It doesn't necessarily mean you're going to succeed either. So we have to really start thinking about, like, how do we create truly sustainable businesses that are profitable, that we start thinking about how do we become truly sustainable on our own, businesses that actually feed our community, that create equity and justice. Why are we not thinking about how do we grow equity and justice in an economy rather than how do we raise money? It's just the wrong question to be asking. And so we have to stop functioning in this system because it's a very exploitive, extractive system. And at the end of the day, investors have a responsibility. Their investment is not they talk about making impact, but at the end of the day, they have to return money to their investors, to their limited partners. That's their motive.
Yeah.
And if our motive is to change the world through whatever it is we're making and to protect the planet and the animals and everything else, we can't lose sight of that. And we have to create a new form of economy that allows founders to actually hold on to their businesses, because, unless you're starting something to flip it, like you're buying a house to flip it, if you're starting a business because you believe in it, we have to create those economies that allow us to have a livelihood, to actually be able to make a living from our businesses, instead of focusing on making a killing, which is what we're focused on now, is like, I'm going to grow this business and I'm going to flip it and make, $50 million. Like, did that really have the impact on the planet and animals and people, even though you got rich? So we have to redesign the entire economy. And I think it's going to have to be a grassroots movement.
Yeah.
And there'll have to be a groundswell of lots and lots of little businesses that just decide, but we're not going to play this game. We're not going to play this capitalist game. We're going to do it differently.
Yeah.
And eventually there'll be so many that it will overtake the way of doing business, the Whole Foods method and Amazon and all of this.
Right. Yeah. And I am very sorry that what happened to you happened, but like you said, the fact that it was public and you are so eloquent and you're so strong in your convictions and you've been open about everything, I'm sure really helped a lot of people and really has helped shine a light on how broken the system is. This is something that a lot of people had wondered about, and I had wondered about, and do still wonder about, is that if someone buys a Miyoko's product today, are you benefiting in any way, or are they supporting you in any way?
Well, we reached a deal and we parted ways amicably, and I wish them well.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really know, to be
Okay.
honest. I can't
Okay.
answer that question.
Okay. Makes sense. You talked about having these sort of local, more artisanal businesses, and it seems like what was so unique and rare about Miyoko's cheeses is that they really had this small batch artisanal feel to them, but at the same time they were widely available. But do you think that those two things, like being artisanal and also being widely available, are fundamentally at odds, or is it possible to have both?
I think you can have both. I mean, there are artisanal products in Europe that are fairly widely available. I don't think you have to be the only one.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe you don't have to become at some point when you scale, efficiencies become the focus.
Right.
And sometimes quality is sacrificed. And
Yeah.
so at the end of the day, you have to decide, how much am I willing to sacrifice
Right.
for greater distribution? So at some point, I think you have to look, you can have wide distribution, but doesn't have to be the widest distribution. At some point, you have to balance the quality of the product that you want to make
Mm-hmm.
with what's possible in terms of
Mm-hmm.
distribution, and decide, okay, how big do I really want to get? Like,
Right.
is it just growth at any cost, or is it growth that will sustain your lifestyle, the lifestyle, treat your workers in a fair way, provide food to your community, give you time to spend with your family, go to the ballpark, volunteer somewhere? I think we have to really start thinking about, why are we doing this? What does it matter if we get onto the cover of Forbes or Inc. magazine? Like, is that really what we're after?
Mm-hmm.
Or is it to nurture community? And how can we create businesses that will actually do that? So, the question of like, do I want to be everywhere? I don't even think that way anymore.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Is there anything else that you'd like to clarify or touch on about everything that happened and, maybe your hopes for the future?
My hopes for the future is to encourage others to find a way to create community, to help support their communities. I'm working on a project right now that we're not 100% announcing, but we are looking to creating the world's first vegan village that would have everything from people actually living there, um, shops, restaurants, that sort of thing. And so I'm working on this project with some other people,
Hmm.
and that would become a new form of economy as well, because there'll be businesses there that will sustain that community
Hmm.
rather than, just, I mean, we're not going to take outside investment.
Hmm.
It's a co-op model. Everything is owned, and there'll be lots of different little shops and things. And this is not in America, by the way. It's in a country that it's in Italy. I'll give a hint because I go there
Oh,
all the time.
oh my
But
gosh.
it's something that we've been working on. We hope we can make it a reality. Uh, you know, if you want to live there and participate, there's an opportunity for people.
Hmm.
But I'd like to create a model that could be replicated in other parts of the world.
Hmm.
But I want to create, it's not just an intentional community, but it is a democratic, uh, trying to put democracy in the economic system there.
Yeah.
And making our own olive oil, making our own, I don't know, I might even have a cheese shop there. Who knows?
Mm. Oh my gosh, you're making it sound very appealing. So, the reason I asked the question about whether people, if they purchase a Miyoko's product, they're still supporting you, is because people really want to support you moving forward, and they don't want to put money somewhere that is, actively against you or at at a company that has harmed you. But how can people support you moving forward? And what would you like people to do or put their money toward or put their time toward?
Well, I would definitely like you to go to my scrappy little YouTube channel, which is, not super, oh, it's very scrappy. We'll put it that way. The Vegan Good Life with Miyoko. Like and subscribe, please. And get my book when it comes out next year. I don't know, follow me on Instagram. And, I'm not trying to be an influencer. I'm really trying to influence ideas. It's not about look at me, or that sort of thing. I really feel like we need everyone's participation to turn the economy around in a way that creates true justice and equity for people on the planet as well as animals. And so, I want to start a revolution, basically. I want to nurture a revolution, a compassionate revolution. So if you're interested in that, please follow me. That's how you can support me, I think. But it's not really just supporting me, it's supporting you as well. So, if you read my book next year, then hey, go start a vegan cheese company, a little vegan cheese shop, please. And you can visit Rancho Compasión. And you can support Rancho Compasión by going to our website, ranchocompasion.org. You can volunteer, you can donate, all that good stuff.
Yes, and I will also say your LinkedIn posts are always very thought-provoking, and I always enjoy reading those. So if people want to follow you on there, it's just another way of connecting with you. But overall, I mean, especially based on the response to the video I made last year, it's clear that everybody loves you, wants to support you, and really kind of thinks of you as a guiding star in the vegan movement in a lot of ways. And this conversation, I think, just really further cements that. So I thank you so much for what you've done for the vegan community so far, and I can't wait to see what's in store in the future.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Marielle. Thank you very much. I'll say that again.
Of course. Thank you for joining me, and hopefully we'll stay connected.
All right. Thank you.
How amazing was Miyoko? I was already a fan of hers going into this conversation, and this just solidified it and made me an even bigger fan. In terms of the question she couldn't answer, obviously that was a big question last year, was should we continue buying Miyoko's products? And I took the way she answered to mean that there isn't a clear-cut answer. My conclusion at the end of my video last year was that everyone has to take in all the information, learn about the situation, and make their own decision. I didn't think that there was a right or wrong answer at that time, and I still don't. I did note that she said the words, "I wish them well," and that is something that she said in one of her written statements last year too. Wishing a company well, I interpret that to mean she would like them to do well. She would like the products to continue being bought. That's just my interpretation. Everybody can have their own interpretation. But a more clear-cut conclusion is that we should definitely continue to support Miyoko Schinner on her social channels, especially her YouTube channel. Obviously, following along for updates on her cookbook and pre-ordering that when it's available. And in general, really just listening to what she has to say, because I truly believe she is a fountain of wisdom and insight, and she really has been on the inside and can speak to the issues in the food industry in a way that not many people can. Thank you for watching this video, and again, I am so grateful to Miyoko for her time and vulnerability. And a reminder or announcement for those who don't know that I'm going live again tomorrow, Friday, March 29th at 2 p.m. Eastern on my YouTube channel. So hope to see you back here tomorrow at 2 p.m. Eastern. We're gonna be doing another vegan hot topics roundup. It was really fun last time, but that is it for today. Give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Subscribe for more of my videos. Tap the bell to be notified when I upload, and I'll see you soon. Bye.